In a world overrun with an infinite amount of multiverses, originating from a plethora of sources, four longtime friends band together to try to make sense of it all and present it to an audience in an easy-to-digest podcast. This is Geeking Off the Page.
Greetings, geeks. This is another Mike and Trev episode of Geeking Off the Page. What do you, Trev? What are we talking about?
Well, for those in the know, on Friday, Disney Plus just dropped their new series, Obi-Wan Kenobi. And for those who didn't know, wake the hell up. We've all been waiting for this. Where have you been? What cave have you been hiding in? What rock have you been under? Jeez. If you haven't watched the first two episodes, which dropped, they dropped both the first two episodes at the same time. If you haven't watched them, pause now, go watch them, come back.
Or let us spoil it. It's up to you.
We're going to be talking way over your head at this point. And I will go right ahead. This will be a spoiler cast because, frankly, we have to. So you've been warned. We'll give you a count of 3, 2, 1, pause, and welcome back. So on to Obi-Wan.
And the Grand Inquisitor dies.
I'm going to hand it right over to you right at the start, Mike. First thoughts, Obi-Wan, episode 1 and 2. What are you thinking? Oh, no. Michael has frozen. He got so excited, he froze. So I'm going to pause for a second to see if he comes back. Mike came back. All right, Mike.
Hey, this is going to be an interesting podcast. Yeah, internet's failing. The Inquisitors are after us. Who knows what's going on in this one. So first thoughts on Obi-Wan. A Facebook friend kind of summed it up best in that he hasn't seen a real Star Wars thing since the original trilogy. And there's a little bit of that feeling that I had. And now, sort of like when we were talking last week about Doctor Strange, I was coming into this with such low expectations that I was kind of happy. Like, the family had fun with it. There's moments I enjoyed. They did some clever story stuff. But so the overall feeling is it's not quite Star Wars. Ewan McGregor is fantastic. Little Leia, fantastic. Little Luke, fantastic. Even, great. I would say 4 of the 5 Inquisitors were fantastic. So there's a lot of neat stuff, but like if we're going to get into the weeds, which we will, of course, because this is a Geeking Off the Page podcast. There's lots to talk about. So first 2 episodes, again, going in very low expectations. The show hit above the expectation, which made me feel a little bit happy. There's a lot of cool stuff in it. I'm very skeptically curious to see where this whole thing goes. It could go sideways. It could turn into Book of Boba Fett with the Spy Kid mod squad and everything else. So I don't know where it's heading.
Well, we're 33% in already because there's only 6 episodes.
Right. Okay. So, it's like the premise is set. You can kind of see where it could go. You also can see where it could go wrong.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it was a fun ride. That was more fun than I thought it would be. So what was your first impressions on it?
It was funny. So I watched the 2 episodes back to back. And I had put a comment of, well, it's a good thing they showed the first 2 episodes, because if they'd showed the first one, I probably would have been very disappointed.
More like a Survivor Man episode.
Yeah, it was funny. It was like it took about an hour or 2 after seeing the 2 episodes and letting it percolate in my brain that I realized that was some damn fine storytelling. Because
so what part was fine? Like, what was the thing that stood out as
they couldn't just jump right into it, because it's been 10 years since we've seen Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, and he's been doing nothing. Literally, he's been doing nothing. In fact, let's show you for an entire episode. He's really been doing
not only
nothing.
that, thing is so we saw him at the end of episode 3, and the next time we see him is A New Hope, back in 77, where he's an old man. So that spot in between, this is going to fill in some of the questions, but for us as a viewer, we haven't seen Obi-Wan Kenobi since the end of episode 3 for 10 years. There's a 10-year gap there. Yeah. And I was thinking initially, okay, what's he been doing with his life? he's watching over Luke, but it begs the question, like, did he immediately become like the hermit hobo that we see in episode 4, or does he get to that point? And what struck me is the smart storytelling is the little subtle clues to show that he is suffering from a massive amount of PTSD.
Yeah.
In the last 10 years, he's been trying to come to grips with the fact that he killed his best friend. His 2 best friends, Padme and Anakin, are dead.
Yeah.
The Jedi Order, which he's been a part of since a young child, is gone.
Yeah.
The only other Jedi he knows of for sure is Yoda, who has not disclosed his location to him. And he has not been able to, at this point, contact Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
So this is a man who's all by himself. He's given a task that he's not sure how to accomplish. He wants to avoid the mistakes he made with Anakin.
Yeah, he's failed all of his other tasks.
Yeah, and as I said, he's going through a massive amount of PTSD. And there's a telling moment in the second episode when he says something, or at the first episode when I'm not the man you knew. I'm not the man I used to be.
Mm-hmm.
He's acknowledging the fact that,
right?
Yeah. And in the second episode, when he catches Leia with the Force, it takes him a huge effort to do that. Compare that to when he fought Grievous. How easy the Force came to him. He struggled to use the Force because in a way he's turned his back on it.
Yeah.
Because it just thinking of the Force or using the Force brings him pain, emotional pain, because of all the loss that he's that is associated with it. So,
and it's not just that, he's legit been trying to be in hiding.
Yeah. So
he's like turned that switch off.
Yeah,
so
he turned off the tap and it's been dry for a while. So
when random Jedi dude shows up, it's like, what are you doing? Like, no. Like,
yeah, and he's like,
dead.
What about the Jedi? And he's like, what about the war? And he's like, we lost.
Yeah.
And he's accepted it. He's accepted his role in it, but it still haunts him.
Yeah.
And I think like the little flashbacks of like him fighting Anakin and all, it shows that he's not been able to move past the fact that he killed his best friend. Yeah. His best friend, his student. Obi-Wan was part of the fall of the Jedi. If he hadn't trained Anakin, or if he had trained Anakin properly, he probably wouldn't have turned, and this Jedi Order would still be going. Or, there's hundreds. He's probably played 1,000 what if scenarios in his brain over the last 10 years, and we get to now see that. And when I say it was fine storytelling, they did it in such a way they didn't drop it in our lap like PTSD. They've done it in little bits, and we see in the way that he's not like the secretive, all-powerful Jedi. He's a man going through his daily routine, trying to live up to the expectations of making sure that Luke's. I mean, the fact that we saw that T-16 toy that in A New Hope that Luke's playing with while he's waiting for the droids in their back.
It's kind of funny that Obi-Wan is Santa Claus. I mean, that's funny.
Obi-Wan gave it to him because I was thinking his uncle would never give him that because that's a frivolous waste of money. Maybe the aunt, but she does whatever the husband says. Yeah. So to find out that was a gift from Obi-Wan's kind of cool. But again, we're 33% into this series.
Yeah.
It's 6 episodes. There's so much stuff to unpack, but most of it is Obi-Wan's journey from the end of Revenge of the Sith to where we see him at the start of A New Hope.
Yeah, which is what it should be considering it's called Obi-Wan, right?
Yeah.
So there's no bait and switch there.
There's no bait and switch. Yet. They're sticking with them. I thought there was a bit of when they started jumping over to Leia, I was like, is she really going to be this important to the story? And she is.
I actually got more to say about PTSD, Ben, but yeah, let's talk about that Leia thing first, because this is a trope that happens in all movies. Like, it's the female that will save us all kind of trope that is just, we're getting in all media, but this is one that actually works.
It does,
because in original New Hope, Leia knows who Obi-Wan is. Not only does she know who Obi-Wan is, she knows who Ben Kenobi is.
Well, she says that he fought for her father in the Clone Wars.
Right.
So there might be a bit of a skewed history from her dad as to the connection with Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, but the writing was clever enough.
Yeah, they
kind of
put it together
in there. So she knows about that backstory, but the fact that she knows it's Ben Kenobi is interesting. And I would, on the second time watching it, I was very careful to make sure it's like, how does she know it's Ben? Because it should be Obi-Wan, and he introduces himself as Ben.
Yeah. There was little things like that.
And that's a way to get it off Tatooine. They don't know where Luke is. So you can have a proper story while keeping the integrity of the whole thing. Like, nobody knows Luke's on Tatooine.
Yeah. Now the Inquisitors, they've been pulled lock, stock, and two smoking barrels from Star Trek Rebels.
Trek Rebels.
Yeah. The
I thought it was Star Wars Rebels.
Oh, sorry. It's been a long day.
I know.
I've done a lot of stuff today.
Hey, we're here to catch each other when we fall.
Exactly. So so Star Wars Rebels. So it's now in Star Wars Rebels, they went in a fairly deep dive as to who the Inquisitors are, but they explained it so quickly and so easily for people who haven't watched Rebels that
I have not. So I'm actually curious to hear this.
So when they gave the Inquisitors are fallen Jedi and apprentices who joined the dark side and are here to hunt down all the rogue Jedi. That's all they needed to say.
I love that backstory, considering the Galactic Empire is essentially Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
And
now
the amount of people the Nazis got, like Jewish people to help them, or
whatever, or the French, sure. Now, what was nice was, so at the very start, you got those young Padawans, or the younglings, being trained by their teacher, and their teacher's saving them as they're running, but the teacher gets cut down and they're just running and running and running. These kids, some of them are the basis of the Inquisitors.
My son picked that up. He thought one of them is the fourth sister.
Yeah.
And I didn't notice that, so I haven't gone back and taken a look.
Only thing is her age is where it would be off, because
10 years later, if it was 10
only 10 years, but
10 years later,
if they're 8 to 10, that we don't want to make her 20. She looks a little older than that.
Well, it's a pretty young actress.
But the thing is my guess is she's probably not one of those Padawan that we saw fleeing, or the younglings. She's probably she was a young Padawan.
Yeah.
And I want to go a little bit deeper into her, because I have some guesses like why she wants Obi-Wan so badly. And I think part of it is she blames him for the fall of the Jedi. She's dropping it right at his feet, because if he hadn't screwed up with Anakin, the Jedi would have never fallen.
You think?
And I think if thing is if he had trained Anakin better, Anakin would have resisted the seduction of Palpatine better, would have brought in the Master Jedis quicker, and would have resolved that situation without him turning to the dark side. But because he let Anakin embrace his emotional side and his fear for his mother and his fear for Padme, that gave the Emperor basically a wide open door to step through and subvert him to the dark side.
I think that's a cool idea. I don't think that's what it's going to be.
But the thing is, I'm thinking she was probably a young Padawan whose Jedi that she was learning from was killed. She got subverted into the Inquisitors, and she blames Obi-Wan. And that's why she has such a hard-on to bring him in, because she wants Vader's favor. She knows, everyone knows, probably all the Inquisitors know that Vader is Anakin. So if she can bring Obi-Wan, wrapped up with a bow and dropped it at Vader's feet, she may be one of the only Inquisitors that doesn't get killed when all the rest of the Jedi are dead. Because the Inquisitors in the back of their mind have to know, once they finish, finding all the rogue Jedi, then the only Jedi left are the Emperor, Vader, and them, and they won't be around long to see where the Emperor goes, or the Empire goes. So if she figures if she can do this for Vader, she doesn't get killed at the end, he'll spare her. Maybe she'll become his apprentice or something to that. Hoping.
That part, I think, is where the story is going. I have a feeling they didn't go deep enough to.
Well, you still have 4 episodes.
And they can still edit it in. It hasn't been released.
Exactly.
Dave Filoni, if you want Trevor's idea, you still have time to work it in there.
Yeah, anytime. It took a couple of hours after watching the 2 episodes for some things to roll around in my head, and I just realized just how smart some of the writing is to just have these tiny little crumbs that link us to the movies, but also give us possibilities for these next 4 episodes.
Yeah.
I'm
Some of the creative writing that I thought was great was the fact there was another Jedi on Tatooine, because that's one thing from the trailer. It's like, oh my god, they know he's there. Like, it's just too obvious. But the fact they were actually tracking somebody else,
yeah,
I thought was genius. The whole kidnapping of Princess Leia, I thought was genius. That's the
that
way to
was
get
super
him off
smart.
planet.
That was
You know?
super smart.
Yeah, and just the idea, or the way they wrote Obi-Wan in hiding, I really like that.
I
And
mean,
now he's got a kind of, it's like a very
yeah,
Clint Eastwood Unforgiven kind of.
he's cutting up fish cubes
Yeah.
and
So
the thing
all
is
those parts.
she didn't know that he was on Tatooine.
Yeah.
So to have her come up with the idea, we'll kidnap Leia, and he's going to go to wherever the kidnappers go. She's setting the battleground at that point.
Yeah, and she doesn't know that's a Skywalker. So
Yeah.
it's like,
In
no,
her mind,
I'm-
it's an Organa. So
yeah. So all that stuff was very clever the way that was written.
I liked again, the second episode had some really nice things, like the fake Jedi using magnets and stuff like that to appear as a Jedi, and all
That character cringed me out when I first saw him, because it's like, oh my god, is this really a Jedi? And then as it went on, wait, is he a Jedi? And finally clued in. I will hand it to my son. He clued in way sooner than I did.
Well, there was there was a book series, like one of the Star Wars series. I mean, obviously non-canon anymore, where one of Luke's students who kind of went to the dark side came and found his redemption and came back. In the story, he hooks up with this freighter pilot and her partner uses those exact same tricks, magnets, little repulsor fields, to appear as a Jedi, and she will show up at a market, and there'll be problems, and she will be there to offer Jedi mediation, but because she's so poor, they have to pay her so she can keep on sort of, and that's how she basically cons everybody into thinking she's a Jedi. And I mean, the story goes on, it's revealed he is actually a Jedi, and yes, she's not, but it reveals, she's using magnets and all this. And I was like, when I saw this, and I was like, he's fake, because especially when he's like closing things, and then when Obi-Wan's like magnets, and I was like, that was right out of that story. That's an awesome little homage to something that's been rendered non-canon, but was still a cool, because con men are going to be doing that stuff.
Yeah,
because people
is incredibly dangerous, considering there's Inquisitors coming to kill you. But
yeah,
if
but
it's
not
real, and you're just
but the thing is,
profiteering on it.
if people are still in kind of a way hoping that the Jedi can come and solve their problems, because I mean, that's what the Jedi were. They wandered the galaxy. They were like a judge and jury sort of thing for if there was a conflict, the Jedi would show up and kind of smooth the waters, and everyone would get what they want, sort of thing, or they would give mediation, kind of like a street judge and Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
So the same sort of idea. So, if you have a conflict and here comes a Jedi, you're like, well, at least it's going to get resolved. So to see, this guy, he's helping people and getting them off planet for a modest fee, of course, because he has to eat, but then he's a Jedi, and so they trust him. There's still that inherent trust of the Jedi, because the Empire's not making any friends with their policies. So I applauded that character. And yeah, initially I was like, oh, but yeah, it worked out really well. I liked who they've got so far for the cast. I think so far all the casting has been really well done. And I like the fact that even yeah.
Oh man. She cringes me out so badly, and to the point where I almost feel sorry for her. I mean, apparently Lucasfilm is already, or was even before it was released, was preparing for the backlash of that. And it's like, I don't blame the actress. She got hired on for a role and she's doing her thing.
Yeah.
But how many steps along the way could somebody have said, you know what, maybe that's not the right person for the role. Let's get someone with a little more scary screen presence. What was it? Who's the other woman? Shoot, I should know this.
Yeah,
there was another Inquisitor that was there, and
so
she was so much more scary. And all she did was look around.
Yeah, Yeah, the fourth sister.
Fourth sister is Riva, right?
No,
And then
she's the third sister. Reva's the third sister.
oh, okay.
The fourth sister is the one that had like the crazy head thing.
Oh,
And
the cool thing.
yeah,
Okay. So anyways, that one, Inquisitor, because with the white face and the yellow eyes and the cybernetic stuff coming out of the neck,
Mhm.
uh, that was very believable to me. But
Yeah.
this one, like especially when you're going up against an actor as powerful as Ewan McGregor,
Yeah, well, that's why
it's like,
I kind of like the fact that they picked her, just in as much as she's showing her inexperience, her basically her naked ambition to rise above all the other Inquisitors, including the Grand Inquisitor. Because I think with a more polished actress, you wouldn't get that kind of hunger. It would
so
feel
you
kind of
thought it
like,
was okay, eh?
I thought it was okay. I mean, I want to see where it goes. The fact that when she killed the Grand Inquisitor, I mean, the Grand Inquisitor was a character they really built up in Star Wars Rebels. Like, this was, one step below Vader in terms of power and skill.
What I had heard, I read some online article, and again, I haven't watched Rebels, so I don't know for sure. But
Mhm.
apparently, Rebels technically happens after this,
Yes, it's I don't. Well, thing is it's the
which
Grand
means he
Inquisitor.
could come back.
Well, the original voice actor was oh god, what's his name? Uh, Jason Isaacs, did the voice of the original Inquisitor, and he put so much menace in it. Like, this is Jason Isaacs has done so many different voice roles and many acting roles, and usually plays the villain because he just plays it so goddamn well. Um, so maybe, I mean, it might be a different Inquisitor, but the fact that he looked the same. So I don't know if maybe there is a clone. But the funny thing is I remember reading, so the Grand Inquisitor believes himself to be as powerful as Vader, and basically hopes that the Emperor will push Vader aside and take him as his personal apprentice.
Okay.
But both the Emperor and Vader know that this guy it's like, if the Emperor's here and Vader's here in power, the Grand Inquisitor's not quite on the page. He's on the back of the second page.
Yeah.
But he thinks he's on the first page as powerful as Vader. He's not even close. And that's his delusion. So yeah, and for me, what was funny is the fifth brother, the guy wearing the basically the mushroom head.
Yeah.
That's the guy from the Fast and Furious.
Okay.
That's the what's his face? I can't think of his name now. Han from Fast and Furious. That's him. Because the first time I saw his face, I'm like, who is that? And then he spoke. I'm like, it's the guy from Fast and Furious. So I looked it up. Of course, it was. So
I thought he did a great job again with Riva and him on screen together.
Mm-hmm.
He's terrifying, and her, it's just she's kind of pouty and hissy. At least that's the way I took it.
So, I mean, all in all, I am really enjoying this series. As I said, the first episode, if it had just been that and that alone, I would probably have a much different tune, because it took the second episode to get my brain kicked into gear and thinking about it, and then thinking about what trauma has Obi-Wan gone. I mean, we've seen the trauma. We know a good portion of the trauma he's gone through, and we can see, I think Ewan McGregor is playing it to the hilt of a man who's, his past is catching up with him, and it's not a good past. Like, it's and then the realization at the end when he's told that Anakin lives, and you can see the look on his face of just like, this is someone he thought he betrayed, someone he has had like killed 10 years ago. This guy's alive. And then when it snaps to, the Vader breathing noise and inside the back to tank and Vader's eyes flick open, I'm really excited to see where this goes.
That's something I didn't even think about, that Obi-Wan didn't know that Anakin was still alive.
He thought he killed him.
It makes sense. And, obviously we all knew he was alive.
Yeah.
But the character Obi-Wan in that situation,
he
had
just
no idea.
He left. I mean, Anakin was sliding down the slope and caught fire. He took the lightsaber, scooped up Padme, and off they went to see if they could, save Padme's life.
Yeah,
he never stuck around. At that
point on, they were just running.
Yeah, and he never stopped to check to see if Anakin lived. In his mind, Anakin died, and then Padme died, and so as I said, like his two best friends are gone.
Yeah.
And all of his, co-workers on the Jedi Council, with the exception of Yoda, are dead. And Yoda's gone into deep hiding that, so yeah. And he can't even, as I said, he can't even contact Qui-Gon for advice, because it was a really telling scene when he's pleading with Qui-Gon to, help him, give him some advice, anything, and he gets nothing back.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I kind of hope we never see him contact Qui-Gon, because it'll kind of explain why we see in New Hope he never, why does he never talk about Qui-Gon in any way?
Of course, he's not around too much in the New Hope.
Yeah, well, he's there a couple of times. So that's why I'm like, I'm hoping that there's that gap there, that he's still on his own.
Yeah. Now, there's a couple things that I also really liked. One is the very first opening shot into Tatooine. It looks like they gave it like a film grade or desaturated.
Yeah.
It looked a lot more closer to a 1977 type film than a lot of these newer ones.
Yeah.
So that desaturation and that color, that got me kind of excited, because that started to look like Star Wars more than a lot of other things.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really cool. I like that there wasn't as much goofy force powers like in the prequel trilogy. Like when you're seeing Obi-Wan, punching guys, it's like, no, it's this like fisticuffs style. It's not over the top. And that's fun, because in the original Star Wars, like, you didn't get all the weird flippy flips and that kind of thing that from the prequels, right? It's like a lot more grounded. So I was happy to see a more kind of grounded reality. Like, even when the Force is used, it's feels more like original trilogy.
Yeah. It's used sparingly.
Yeah. There's not all the aliens, but I'd say 80% of them looked pretty good, like Star Wars.
That you'll notice the only people who use lightsabers, the Inquisitors.
Yeah.
Even though he had it on him, he never ignited his lightsaber.
Yeah. And that's going to be a huge moment when he finally does.
Yeah. Right? Or if he does.
He's got to against Vader. If there's not an Obi-Wan and Vader fight at some point, then I'm going to be heartbroken. There has to be one fight in there.
I'm secretly wanting one, but at the same time, I'm like, how are they going to do that? Because when we see them as old men in episode 4, they ain't moving too good. I mean, just right. That's pretty much the extent of what they can do.
And that's why I'm so excited, because this one could be a proper fight.
The thing is, Vader's still going to be Vader. Like, Anakin's still going to have all the metal. That's what's slowing him down.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw him a bit at the end of Rogue One, moving at full speed. So maybe. I'm kind of hoping it'll be almost like a Scene 38 reimagined again.
Yeah. And if it was written in this, like, it doesn't have to be, like an actual Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat fight, It could be a runaway kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It probably would be.
Like, yeah, just run for your life. Get the hell out of there. Yeah.
It's probably run, make some distractions, slow him down so I can get away.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
And leave Vader like, I just want to kill him.
Yeah, that's not a presence I felt since.
And then he turns and he never finishes that line.
Yeah.
So we don't know since when. Like, is it this?
They'll probably change it since the Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney Plus.
Since 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a lot of. I didn't want to put my hopes up way too much, but
yeah,
I definitely had some hopes, and they delivered pretty well. I said if I had just seen the first episode, I would have been disappointed, but the second episode was enough to really drive home what direction they're going with this, and I fully applaud it. So
yeah, and before this segment runs out, I have to say, jumping back to the sad Obi-Wan bit, that did trigger me a little bit. I was starting to get Force Awakened vibes, and it's like,
Mhm.
oh no, don't go there. Like, don't you start milking space walruses and pouting and throwing lightsabers, and it started to feel like it was going there. And I'm like, dude, it's been 10 years. Like, get over yourself. You've had this much time. You're a Jedi. You can cope with this. Although the only kind of saving grace is that gives room for a character arc over the next 6
It
episodes.
does. It does. I want to kind of see how his relationship with Uncle Owen goes, because
Mhm.
that's not good. That's not good at all.
Yeah, and that was fun. Like, because I always liked the fact that Uncle Owen hated the old wizard in the mountain.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Crazy old hermit.
yeah.
So yeah, as I said, I'm thoroughly enjoying this. But we have more stuff coming up. We've got, I think it's was till the 22nd of June is when the last episode airs. But before we jump into the next segment, we're going to hear from Troy, who has many opinions to add in, and then we'll be back with more stuff after this.
Take it away, Troy.
Thank you for that, guys. Listening to so far what you guys have done so far, the episode, I'm really enjoying it. And greetings, Planet Geek. This is the returning Troy, just putting a little supplemental in the middle of this particular episode. Now, while I haven't gotten around to doing an actual live recording with the guys, and we're just getting back onto it, last week it was asked of me what were my opinions of what they had talked about in the previous episode. So I'm just going to stop in here for a minute or two in the middle of this episode and give my lowdown of what I'm thinking about the things that are going on in this geek sphere. So first up, we're there's no getting around it. There's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, the guys are doing a fantastic episode so far about Obi-Wan Kenobi, the first 2 episodes. So I'm not going to go into any great detail because I know that if I do start talking about it and what I think of these first 2 episodes, by the way, fantastic. That's all I'm going to get into right now. But I'm just saying that there's nothing more that I can say about how excited I am for this show. The 6 episodes feels like it's not going to be enough. But I have a great feeling that no matter what this is, there will be a benchmark for the Star Wars TV universe. And what we've seen so far, and knowing where the series lays in the bigger storyline, that so many possibilities could come to fruition. Again, I could go into my own whole entire half-hour breakdown of what I saw in these first 2 episodes, but that's not my place right here to do. I'm just doing a quick in and out, and then just move on to what the guys are continuing on from. So the other thing that I was asked about was She-Hulk. While I was hoping to see a Boston Legal version of this, it seems it's going to be trying to bridge the gap between the MCU and the Netflix Marvel series. More of a Jessica Jones than the others, but still be more on the light side. I'm a huge fan of Tatalia Maslany, and her work on Orphan Black was spectacular, and I can't wait to see her full take on what looks to be a John Byrne light version of Shulky. And I'm hoping that these are not the final effects. So, I mean, it looks cool. Some stuff seems a little off, and it just looks like, hey, we needed to get a trailer out. This is what we have done so far. So, there you go. Now, one of the biggest things is Moon Knight. Now, I knew the character of Moon Knight being in the comics, but I never followed his story very much. He was mostly a secondary character whenever I read something he appeared in. Plus, with his history and his background are always being rewritten. So, however, when Disney Plus announced the series and that Oscar Isaacs was attached, I was totally on board. I believe for the past decade, Oscar Isaacs, in my opinion, is one of the greatest actors to emerge. Sure, there's Poe Dameron, my favorite character from the Disney saga Star Wars movies. But other roles that I've seen him in, he's always been top notch. Taking in consideration that Moon Knight was shot during strict COVID protocols, visually it was an impressive feat. And I'm so glad that Ethan Hawke is bad and doing fantastic work as dark bad guys. Also, not knowing anything about May Kalamaway, she was a surprise, especially when she has to act up against Oscar's constantly shifting performance, which is marvelous in the way, not only audibly but physically, the transformation between Steven and Mark. I'm really hoping there will be more scene of Oscar of Moon Knight in the MCU. It was kind of neat to see that Disney themselves at the last minute decided to change the titling of the final episode of this season to be the series finale to the season finale, so that's always a good sign. Now for something that, again, I could probably go into a whole entire half hour, 45 minutes on my own, I'm just going to do this straight and out. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. What can I say? I love Sam Raimi. I love the Sam Raimi of it all. It's too bad that the Multiverses of Madness meant only visiting 2 other multiverses, but it was fun. Elizabeth Olsen wins as the big bad guy. Benedict worked well as the Multiple Strange, but my stumbling problem is still why 3 different actors for Peter Parker and only 1 for Strange. Anyways, sure, the Illuminati was taken out way too easily, but it was still fun to see them all. I mean, this is not the greatest MCU movie, plus after No Way Home, it had a lot to live up to, so. Then we got the Love and Thunder trailer. This one is a tough thing to give an opinion on. These trailers, while visually appealing, there's no sense of structure because of its teaser aspect. Fantastic reveals, great gags. Jane's reveal is perfect. Can't wait to see the movie. The ideas of just the visuals alone, it's kind of cool. I'm already thinking of making a Jane Thor costume for my daughter, sort of thing. But that's kind of cool. But I have no doubt that Taika Waititi will give us an entertaining adventure, but will it live up to Ragnarok? We'll have to see. And as for the last thing that I was asked about, Love, Sex, and Robots Season 3. I must admit I never got around to finishing the 2nd season, but I do intend on it and the surprising 3rd season. So that's about it. I'm just going to step back out and throw it back to the guys. I will hopefully be dropping in the regular rotation sooner or later, but back to you guys I'm pretty sure, to talk about more Star Wars.
Hey, Troy, thanks for joining us. So interesting stuff. Haven't heard it yet, actually, but we will when we re-listen to the podcast. So what are we talking about next, Trevor?
Well, I thought you had posed a very, very interesting Star Wars related question. So I want you to ask the question, and then I'll give an answer, and then you give your answer.
So we're not doing Miss Marvel yet? We're going straight to Star Wars.
I think we'll wait till next week to do Miss Marvel.
Okay, so, and again, this came up from a friend on Facebook where we're talking about Star Wars and how the later stuff after the original trilogy didn't really feel like Star Wars. And I 100% agree. But that got me thinking, just as like a little mental experiment. What is it that makes Star Wars feel like Star Wars? You know, there's certain obvious things like the John Williams score. There's the, the white fade pans, the actual physical models, the puppets and masks, the 70s hairdos. Those are some things, but if you look at everything that's come since the original trilogy, where it starts kind of drifting off the mark, every now and then you get a glimpse of it. It's like, oh, that felt like Star Wars. That felt like Star Wars. Then you get something that's like, oh, no, that's not Star Wars. So the question is, what is it that makes Star Wars feel like Star Wars?
All right. Well, so I've been thinking about this one, and I did a little bit of research. So a while back, there was this whole design a starfighter challenge, and it was given to Porsche. And they worked with Doug Chiang, who was one of the lead designers for Star Wars, and they came up with a ship. And you could say it's Star Wars, but it wasn't. And There's a couple of YouTube videos that do some deep dives into it, and they also had the same opinion I did. It was the design language. Star Wars has a very specific design language that Ralph McQuarrie started with. Number one, very recognizable silhouette. You can see the silhouette of an X-Wing versus the Millennium Falcon, any ship in Star Wars, and you can say that's Star Wars. And if you suddenly throw in like a silhouette of like the Enterprise, or even, you know, something from the Expanse, you instantly go, well, that's not Star Wars.
And that's one interesting thing with all those ships, is when they're designing that kind of stuff, it's like, okay, the Millennium Falcon is a hamburger.
Yeah,
like, really, like one of those iconic ships is based on a hamburger.
Yeah, and
you know, like Boba Fett Slave One, it's a lamppost.
Yeah, or it looks like an iron. So there's a lot of kind of like design cues that they use, like the Imperials, that very specific wedge shape of the Star Destroyer, things like that it screams Star Wars. But the other thing, I mean, I've referenced this many times, the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek. Star Trek, everything is shiny and new and looks like it's been designed by Apple, all nice rounded corners. Star Wars is, it's lived in, stuff gets dirty. More importantly, stuff gets patched, and not patched with, and not, you know, something gets damaged, gets replaced with a brand new version of whatever fits. It's patched with whatever piece of junk they have nearby to make it work long enough to get them to their destination.
Yeah.
And the ships, the environments, the props, they all follow that philosophy.
That's one thing I liked in The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Is when he got the Naboo starfighter, but it was like an old rundown thing and they had to put in all the extra parts. It's like, oh, this is starting to look like a Star Wars ship.
Yeah.
You know, that sleek aerodynamic version. I was like, it's a little yellow and shiny. I don't know. But then
by the time they were done,
it's like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's that lived in feeling. I mean, we don't know how long the Star Wars, the universe has been running, sort of thing. Like Star Trek, it's in the 25th century, 23rd century, whatever century it's in. I don't follow it enough to
24th and a half century.
Sure, whatever.
Duck Dodgers.
Yes. So we know how long it's been since where we are to where they are. It's a calculatable amount of time.
Yeah.
We have no frame of reference for that in Star Wars. So we rarely see something that's so new, it's shiny and, all ready to go. The closest we got that was, the big Naboo ambassador ship. But that takes us to episode 1, where we started to lose some of the feel of Star Wars.
Yeah.
And some of that is, as you referred to, is the film grain, the lighting choices. Because I mean, back when they made this, and when it was 77 and 80 and 83, they had to make a lot of compromises because a lot of the technology wasn't there. They were flying off the cuff. So to make some of the stuff work, it was trying to do these workarounds in the best way they knew how, for as cheap as they could, so they didn't blow the budget. Well, you jump into the prequel trilogy and even the sequel trilogy, where computers can do a lot of fun things, and software is that readily available, and they have oodles of money to throw at it. Yeah, it started to lose some of that jury-rigged, patched together look that Star Wars and Empire and Jedi had.
And if you start looking at the art of books, if you look at the prequel trilogy, like Doug Chiang's stuff, phenomenal artwork, right? It's absolutely beautiful. But for Star Wars, it's a little bit over-designed.
Yeah.
And
it's
a little too shiny, a little too intricate. But then if you look at the art of the original Star Wars, it's like some of the drawings look like it was like done by a 10-year-old. It's like very simple.
Very simple.
There's an essence there. There's a spirit there. And then once you give it to the Creature Workshop and they build it.
And a lot of it, for the Creature Workshop, a lot of it's jury-rigged. And that's kind of, to me, the visual look of Star Wars is it's dirty jury-rigged.
Yeah.
I mean, you look compared to the Enterprise, where it looks like they have technicians go out in spacesuits polishing the outside of that thing. All the hallways look like 2 seconds before someone was running by with a vacuum cleaner.
But it has to fit in your living room. That's
Yeah,
the thing with Star Trek.
and people are polishing shit, like polishing the hallways and the little lighting along the floor, and the cabins look like, the maid had just been in, and she carefully, hospital cornered the bed, and the pillow's just nice, and the mint on top. That to me is Star Trek.
Yeah.
Star Wars, it's like a college dorm room from in a dorm room in maybe not that great of section of town.
Now, I'll say one thing that kind of counter that, like there are exceptions. Like you do have Alderaan, and I like the way that looked in Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
That looked very
But
clean.
still looked
Cloud
it
City
still
as
looked
well.
lived in. It's
It
like
did.
Cloud City still looked lived in. Even the posh sections of it, the floors didn't look like, polished so bright that you could eat off the floor or shave because it's a mirror finish.
And there was the hustle bustle of everyday life going on.
Exactly.
Like, it felt like it could be somewhere you could live.
Yeah, and you look at the people's costumes. I mean, people are wearing, the costumes didn't look like they were fresh from the dry cleaner.
That's something. Okay, that's one thing I forgot to talk about with Obi-Wan. Is the same thing with the Spy Kid mod squad in Boba Fett. I forget the name of the planet, the cyberpunk planet.
Mm-hmm.
Where you get people in weird glittery costumes and modern costumes and punk costumes. It's like, to me, that's not Star Wars.
Yeah, that's
Star Wars has something that's this neat blend of science fiction with like an old style. So you have your Darth Vader with his robot suit, then everybody else is wearing robes and cloaks and that kind of a clothing. Like it's an interesting mix. But when you try to modernize it by giving a character hot pink colors, or
it loses something. It's unfortunate when you see some of that, because you're like, that means you've got a designer or a set dresser or someone who doesn't get it. And it's really unfortunate, because it pulls you away from the experience. That's why, I've talked about going to Galaxy's Edge at Disney World and in Hollywood Studios. They got it. So when you step through, the only things that are out of place are the visitors, the guests, all the people who work there, all the signs, all the architecture. If you took away the guests and you were by yourself and just walking through, you would swear you were on a completely different planet somewhere in the Star Wars universe. It's that level of attention to detail. The only thing that pulls you out is like the tourists walking around, flip-flops and whatnot. And that's the only thing that's reminding you, okay, I'm on Earth. Or they just shipped in a bunch of tourists. Either way, that's the level of immersion that I'd hope that when you're making a Star Wars related show would have. So
like if I was doing art direction on these things, you have people come up with their costume designs or character sketches or aliens or whatever. If it was a character, I'd take, you almost want like a vision board from late 70s to early 80s, what things look like. It's like, and this is the character. It's like, no, you have to give him the 70s style haircut. No, you got to like level down the attention to detail in the costume, like make it a little bit more basic, make it a little more hippie. No, not this kind of more.
A lot of it
modern.
Would have a big desaturation slider.
Yeah.
Desaturate a lot, like bleed some of the colors out of that. Make it look like the colors were there when it was first originally manufactured, but weather it with 20 years.
Yeah.
Weather it in a planet that may not have the best of atmospheres, or a planet that's, a desert planet that's going to wind blow everything. Grab that saturation slider and bring it down.
Yeah.
That gives it the lived in look. Like, imagine a pair of jeans when you first bought them, how blue they are and how, how tight the stitching is. Look at that same pair of jeans after 20 years of wear.
And then you had to patch it.
Yeah, but it was your favorite pair of jeans and they fit just right, so you kept patching it. So there's a patch over the knee and maybe a seam got blown out, and you stitched it yourself because you couldn't quite use a sewing machine, but you didn't want to give up on them. Maybe you've had to replace a belt loop and you couldn't quite find the same matching material. Shit like that. When you're done, you're like, that pair of pants is Star Wars.
Yeah, one of the first like 3D model painting jobs I did, um, it was like this robot that was used for Alias Wavefront demos, and so when I was texturing that, I just brought up Slave One and looked at all the different choices that they made. I noticed how all the different panels had slightly different colors, and like it did look patched. So I ended up doing that. It started painting this model with all the different lines and patches and rust mark.
So my sister got me
There we go.
the paper craft version of these. And this is from The Mandalorian. And I also have the other ship, like the Moff ship as well. But when working on this, like this is just cardboard and it's just folded and segmented and just like
the audio listeners, go check this out on YouTube.
Yeah, go check it on YouTube. But you can see like every panel is dirty. Every panel has its own particular shape.
And you can see there, rust. Even right by your hand, how the different panel colors and how they don't quite line up.
You have a panel that suddenly completely changes color because it's with whatever they had at hand to patch it at the time. So, I mean, I've been struck with the level of detail in this as I'm putting together, because these are just pieces of cardboard that you just pull out of the big mold sort of thing, and you put it in the appropriate spot. But the attention to detail, like especially when you put this at a distance,
and that's what you're talking about. It's a perfect silhouette. It's an iconic shape. There's no other ship in the universe like that anybody's designed.
And as you get closer,
it's very appealing,
and you start to see the detail beyond the silhouette or contained within that silhouette, and you realize it's not perfectly straight and smooth lines, and everything's like lovingly hand polished to a nice mirror, like, or nice finish that's nice and uniform. Shit gets dirty. Shit gets replaced with stuff that maybe shouldn't have gone there. They're like, oh well, there's this panel's missing. Like, well, we can get this panel. We can kind of cut it to shape and kind of roughly grind out some of the edges, and then fits good enough. And that's what makes Star Wars is that lived in, basically dirty jury rig. Yeah. Everything's been dirtied and jury rigged in some fashion. And even when you go to the Palace of Alderaan or Naboo, even at their best, there still has that dirty jury rig feel to it. Like even Leia's little droid that she has still has a little bit of jury riggedness to it.
Yeah, like, especially when it gets slammed down and pops apart, and you see all the wires.
But the thing is, even when they got in close, you could see the seams between the different pieces. It wasn't like, oh, everything's nicely painted and nice color. I mean, you could see the dirt in between the seams where she's been playing with it. It got dirty, or it looks like part of the universe.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my answer.
Now, another big one as far as storytelling. Star Wars is the hero's journey. Like, this is the hero with 1,000 faces, Joseph Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what Star Wars should be. Like, this is old ideas. It's iconic characters. It's not about trying to appeal to the modern generation. This is deconstructing the oldest ideas.
Yeah,
it is deconstructing stuff like Nazi Germany. It's deconstructing ancient religions and persecution and what happens when the war machine comes to enslave everybody. It's like, how do you resist that?
I looked at it as, look at all of the source material that George Lucas used as inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Used a lot of feudal Japan.
Yeah, Kurosawa.
Used the old serials, the old serial dramas.
Yeah, Flash Gordon. Apparently, he wanted to do Flash Gordon first, but he couldn't get the rights.
Yeah. And this is basically Star Wars it's a space western.
Yeah. Even was the Hidden Fortress? Was that the World War II?
Yeah.
One with just like the whole trench fight.
Yeah.
So like
that's
the source material.
He pulled
stuff.
So
jury rigged, sort of like what you're saying with the architecture.
Yeah.
Even the stories had weird jury rig of different stuff.
So it's I find that people who don't look at the source material that inspired George Lucas miss the mark.
Yes.
Because they're like, oh, I'm just basing it off of Star Wars. Well, if you don't base it off of what Star Wars was based off of, you have nowhere else to grow.
Yeah.
This is something actually when I was when I graduated Sheridan, I was offered the chance to go teach. I think it was in go teach in India at like a sister college that they had made an arrangement with. And I remember talking to the coordinator and saying, at this point, I have accumulated probably no more than years of experience of animation professionally. I didn't feel comfortable going over and trying to teach people what I had just finished learning, which still hadn't fully gelled in my head, to try to teach someone else what I had just learned, because all they were going to get was exactly what I got minus 15%. So they would get basically 85% of what I got. And then if they turn around and said, that person, now I want you to start teaching, they're going to take that 85% minus 15. So the next person is only getting 70% of that.
So everything you learned except the 15% you forgot?
No, the 15% that hadn't gelled yet in my head. But that's the idea so without having that professional knowledge past that, I only had that narrow field that I had gotten just from the education alone. Right. I couldn't advance beyond it because I didn't have the experience to. So when I look at people doing stuff with Star Wars, they say, well, I just looked at Star Wars. You can't get out of that envelope. You're stuck in that box because that's all that you've seen. That's all that you've encountered. If you then look at the original source material, you now have a much wider scope to pull from. And
read Dune, man.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, Lucas has not been shy about listing all the different influences he had when he was coming up with the concept of Star Wars and then making it. Go look at all that material, watch those films, watch those serials, read those books. It'll definitely broaden your horizons in terms of creating Star Wars content, but also making content that fits in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's lacking with some of these, is because they're just like, well, I watch Star Wars, so I'm just making stuff in Star Wars. I'm like, you're stuck in that tiny little sandbox.
Yeah, it becomes fan fiction.
And the second you try to
RPG game.
Yeah, and the second you try to go outside of that box without any sort of frame of reference, then it's like, well, that doesn't feel like Star Wars anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my answer. It's long-winded, I know.
And even Star Wars Visions, at that anime thing, you could see the points where they just kind of hit the nerve where it feels like Star Wars.
Yeah.
That first, I forget what it's called, that black and white samurai.
Mm-hmm.
That felt the most Star Wars to me.
It did. Of all of them, that felt the most Star Wars to me. There was a couple that
felt so jury-rigged,
got close, but and then others that were just like, well, it says Star Wars, and that's about the only. And I mean, it was like World War Z. The only thing it shares is the title.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's pretty much my answer for that one.
Yeah, and lightsabers.
Yeah, throw in some lightsabers. That shit always works. Lightsabers, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Got me some laser swords. So yeah.
Oh, another thing to add to all that is there's a part of the feeling of watching it. It's kind of like you're in empty sets that are made to feel bigger than they are. Like there's that sort of vibe, because it is matte painting extensions and, like you're in these big fancy rooms, but it's as basic. It's as cool as you can get while being as basic as you can get. Like there's, it's almost like being on stage or something. Real world locations, that's a huge one. And that new, that virtual stage thing that they have now, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I mean, that's doing a good job of replicating that better than the blue screens and green screens and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's a campiness to the performances and dialogue, but you take it very seriously, right? So it's like it's like all the actors would always say, George, you can write this, but you can't say it.
Yeah.
So there's an element of that. So you can have this crazy campy dialogue, and then it's up to the actors to try and make it work and try and figure out what to do with it. But that really gets the performances going a certain way. That's one thing in the prequel trilogy where Star Wars was already such a big thing and George Lucas was so powerful and the actors coming in were just so happy to be on Star Wars. They just did what they were told.
They had no pushback.
But back in the day, all the actors were saying, this dialogue sucks. No, I'm going to try this. No, You can't do it like that.
Well, you had a slew of very accomplished British actors, both of stage and screen. I mean, some of these people, the credentials were just out of this world, and they'd say to George, "Yeah, I'm not doing it that way."
Right.
I mean, the fact that Peter Cushing, except for a couple of long shots, wore slippers because he told him, he's like, "Those boots are so uncomfortable. I'll do a couple of scenes with them on, but the rest of the time you're going to be shooting from knees up because I'm wearing slippers." And so the compromise had to be made of like, let's adjust these shots with Peter Cushing so that he could stand there in his slippers, because that's how he's doing the scenes, and he had enough gravitas and pull as an actor that George would be like, "All right,
stop around in slippers," and
he's like, "I'll do what you want. I'll make it, but I'll do what you want." But now, as you said, like making the prequels, they're like, this suit's uncomfortable, and be told, the person be thinking, "Shit, that's George Lucas sitting in the director's chair. I'm not going to say anything. I'll just go through with this as it is, as uncomfortable as this costume is."
And then like lines of dialogue. I know Alec Guinness was supposed to say, "You must do what you feel." It's like, what kind of a stupid line is that? It's like, so he changed it up. It's like, "Oh, you must do what you feel." It's right, of course. It's like,
yes.
Yeah, much better. And then the classic one, Empire Strikes Back. It's like, "I love you too."
Yeah,
they do that a bunch of times. Like,
"I love you. I know."
Just do what Han Solo would say. All right.
I know. Now, this also translated to what they could do at the time in terms of filmmaking. Like, look at the movie Jaws. They couldn't show the shark because the goddamn mechanical shark didn't work more than half the time. So it was a lot of alluded to shots and let the audience fill in the rest with their imagination. If you were to make Jaws today with CG sharks, they've done it how many times, but they show the shit of that shark because, hey, look how nice we can make this shark look, and you're like, eh. Jaws the movie would not be even a tenth as good as this if they showed the shark as much as they had wanted to.
Yeah.
The same thing happens now with the Star Wars stuff, is because they go like, well, we got the CG, we can do it.
And that goes to the ships as well. Like
the
fact that the original ships were just a bunch of random model kits thrown together.
My suggestion is, if you haven't seen it, go onto YouTube and look for the Porsche designed Star Wars ship. And the guy who gives the breakdown, he basically, he shows how he would make subtle alterations to the ship to kind of fit it into the Star Wars universe better. And it works. It really does work. You have car designers from Porsche who just kind of, they're doing what they do, which is designing something for Porsche and then trying to shoehorning it into Star Wars. And it fell apart. It came close to the mark, but just didn't quite hit it.
Yeah, when my sons watched the original Star Wars, and once they realized how young I was, like basically a baby when that came out, like, "Dad, why do the ships look so real?" Because they were real. Yeah.
The fact that they made a Millennium Falcon is the size of a quarter, all the way up to a Millennium Falcon that you could almost step into. Like a Millennium Falcon that took two people to carry around. It was so big. So that they could get the shots they needed, depending if it was a far shot or a close-up shot. They made multiple Millennium Falcons to do it. Now it's just, you make one model and you just scale it to the size you need it to in the render window, and whoop, there we go.
Yeah, that's another thing I would do if I was in charge of Star Wars design, is if somebody comes up with something too goofy, like what's the flying guy in Phantom Menace with the snout and hummingbird wings, and who's Anakin, whatever the hell that guy is.
Watto, that's it.
Okay, so you come up with a crazy design like that. It's like, okay, build a puppet of it. Like, let's see if this works.
Yeah.
So you build the puppet, and then if you want to CG it a little bit afterwards, but
for the Mandalorian, they actually built the Razor Crest, and a lot of the shots we see of the Razor Crest is of a physical model with the motion control camera.
You feel it.
It does. It feels more there.
Yeah, and I don't even like the design of the Razor Crest, but when I saw it, it's like, oh, at least it feels real.
It reminded me of the ship from Battle Beyond the Stars, the Corman Star Wars ripoff.
Okay,
because it looked like the ship had like two big eyes, and it looks like they took that ship and kind of turned it around, and then, ooh, it's the Razor Crest. Yeah, so it's funny it's not as iconic in overalls like Slave One or other ships like that. But it does feel like it's part of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah,
They
like it serves a purpose, and it
yeah,
yeah, it
it
doesn't
has
look
an
out
icon.
of place.
It has an iconic silhouette that is viewable from any distance, and as you get closer, you get more and more detail. But it's also lived in. Like the nice yellow lines on it have pretty much been worn away, or panels around it replaced, so it terminates in a strange way, and it fits. It's that jury rigged, dirty look. So yeah, that's my answer.
So that's what makes Star Wars Star Wars.
Yeah, it only took us almost 30 minutes to do it, but yeah.
Troy, if you have anything you want to add, put it here.
Yeah, that'd be a good time.
Hey guys, just jumping in again, and while you guys did a fantastic description of what makes Star Wars, I agree with you wholeheartedly with pretty much every single thing. I'm just saying, if I were to throw my extra 2 bits into this conversation, I'd be actually reiterating a lot of the actual stuff that you guys said, how it's basically the time that it was actually shot reflects what you saw on the screen, and you know what, in the 70s and in the 80s, that's the type of thing you came up with. Empire Strikes Back has a little bit of a twist that makes it seem a little out of the late 70s sort of feel and all that, but yes, definitely A New Hope is definitely rooted in the 70s, and Return of the Jedi is definitely rooted in the 80s. And when it comes to the prequels, they are very beginning edge of the digital technology to make a complete movie in the way that George Lucas made the movie, and that's how it feels. And then you run into your sequel trilogy, the Disney films, and with what they try to get back to practical as much as possible. And again, it has the feel of what it does. Now, what they've done with the TV series is the exact same thing, and the fact that they are getting more and more back to the basics as we go into Obi-Wan, there is more of an original feel to them. And again, like you guys just said, it's definitely, that's what makes Star Wars, reflecting the time that it was made in, and to make it feel like it was previously. And I am happy to say that I believe Obi-Wan gets back to that whole entire feeling of what A New Hope was like in 77.
So I do have one question for you, Mike.
All right.
Did you watch Love, Death, and Robots?
Oh, I have not yet. I said I would.
Yes, you did. And you've just completely let me down.
I did. I let you down. Okay. Next time.
Well, okay. You see the stuff? Let's turn my this stuff right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if I don't use the Shinai, which is like the sword, I'll use the Eskrima sticks.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
Tune you up just right. You had an assignment, man.
I'm so much like my son. That's a shout out to you, Erickson.
Again, I'm going to say watch it. It's fun. It's a lot of fun to watch those. They're not very long. You could binge the whole thing in under 2 hours.
I want to just watch it now. We can watch it together.
Sure.
For the next 2 hours.
I'm good with that. So yeah. Other than that, nothing really new. Haven't seen the new Top Gun movie.
Nope.
Haven't seen the Bob's Burger movie, which I'm probably going to take my wife to, because we've become big fans of Bob's Burgers.
I don't know what that is.
It's one of those shows where the animation may not be that great, but the stories are.
Oh, an animated one. Okay, I do know that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been hearing a lot of rave reviews for the Top Gun movie.
Yeah, I heard a bunch of people say it's like 10 out of 10.
But I've been hearing better reviews for Bob's Burgers. So,
oh wow,
yeah, they're saying it's kind of like the Simpsons movie, but whereas they didn't just kind of like say we're going to have something huge and earth shattering that's going to change the nature of the show. It's like a giant episode, better animated, but in the scheme of things, does not change. It's not like you go to the movie, watch the show, and then come back home and like, well, I wonder how this is what big effects this is going to have for the rest of the season. Doesn't. It's a big episode, but yeah, it's a fun show. I mean, when it first came out, I had no interest in Bob's Burgers at all.
I've never watched it.
And my sister-in-law watched, and she was constantly telling us, we got to watch it, we got to watch it. And then my wife caught a couple of episodes, and it's the same guy who does the voice of Archer.
Okay.
And I love Archer. Archer is hilarious. And so I was like, all right, I'll watch a couple episodes, and I got hooked. And so usually most nights we'll watch 1 or 2 episodes because it's on like one of the Cartoon Network's channels, and at 9:00 we'll watch back-to-back episodes. And we're by no means caught up, nor will we seen these shows in order, but that's the beauty of the show, is you don't have to watch them in order. They're never really out of order. So yeah, it's fun. So yeah, it's too. I mean, I probably will see Top Gun at some point. I will see the Bob's Burgers movie at some point. I know there's other stuff coming out. This summer's packed with movies to watch, but it's also packed with kids going to like summer camps and stuff like that. So
oh yeah, summer stuff's starting.
Yeah, and the school stuff's ending, and
Mm-hmm.
we just had Josie's birthday, so that was joyous. Yeah. But we just did get back from Mystic Aquarium. If you ever get a chance to go to Mystic, Connecticut, they have an awesome aquarium there. And the whole town is awesome. So yeah. I got to feed rays, like stingrays and stuff. It was awesome.
Nice.
They actually like ate right out of my hand. It was cool.
Yeah. Where was it? One of the places I went to. Toronto Zoo maybe had that at some point.
Yeah, you put like a fish in your hand.
And race and
yeah, you put a little fish in your hand, and they skim right over top of your hand and suck it right out of your hand. Yeah. It was cool.
Completely unrelated to geeking off the page, but that was one of the epic experiences in Hawaii, is doing the night dive with the giant manta rays.
Oh, that sounds so awesome.
Yeah, so I had, they come down to shine the lights and are eating up the plankton. The one came with the mouth, again, gigantic mouth, skimmed across the top of my bald head. It's like actually made contact, it was pretty epic.
That sounds so awesome.
Yeah.
My only fear is like, following the rays is a shark that decides, ooh, that looks delicious. Let's take it.
Yeah.
Let's take a sample bite.
When you're living in Hawaii, it's like, they're there.
Yeah. There's more tiger sharks there than most. So yeah. I love sharks. I just know that as long as I stay on land, there's yet a case of a shark coming up on land and eating someone.
I know. We're from the Jaws generation.
Yeah, exactly. Where you look at you're standing at the ocean, you're on the beach, you look out at the water, go, today?
Yeah.
Am I to do that crash zoom?
As soon as the crash zoom happens, it's over.
Like you're there, you look at the water, it's like, you're like, oh,
damn it.
Where's the Kittner boy? And Pippet. Where's Pippet? Anyone seen the dog Pippet? Pippet.
Never name your dog Pippet when you're.
No, the stick floats back. It's like, I don't think Pippet's coming back.
Yeah.
And that Kittner boy out on his raft. That's not gonna go good. So yeah. So I've had a lot of fun. If you're still listening at this point, why? So our goal is,
because we're entertaining and amusing, and have all the answers for all of pop culture.
Exactly. So our goal is to eventually get this podcast restarted and going weekly, like we were for a while there. I blame Gavin because he just never seems to be available every weekend.
No, and he's probably not listening, so we can chirp him as much as we want to, honestly.
I think he just really needs to like clear his social calendar. Gavin, you're not that interesting. At least in the flesh. Come back to the podcast, Gavin. We need you here. We got to have someone to poke fun at. Anyways, yeah, so my goal is to get this podcast up and going again. It's funny, I have actually been contacted by listeners, or my wife has been contacted by people who
listen. They're contacting your wife.
Yeah, a friend of ours
rabid.
Had even said, what happened to the podcast? We were having a great time listening to that, and it suddenly stopped. And so, yeah, I'm hoping they're listening again. If you know who you are, I know if you're listening. So yeah, I would like to get this up and going again because I have a lot of fun with it. And
I know my wife would like us to do this again too, because I'm talking way too much about this to her. And yeah, she's had just about enough of that. So we really need to get this going again.
I have to say that I'm in that same boat. Sometimes there'll be times I'll start talking to my wife and she'll turn to me and she's like, isn't this stuff you would do with your podcast? I'm like, yeah. She's like, yeah, you need to go do it there because I have no interest in what you're saying right now.
It's sort of like when you're house training a dog and it goes on the carpet. It's like, no, not here.
Yes.
Over there at
Go on the
podcast.
newspapers. Go on the newspapers. Go to that podcast. Stop annoying me.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I've run into that situation a couple times because I'll start to get all enthused about something. It's like, ooh, did you hear about this and this? And just the look on my wife's face of just like, you're talking to the wrong person. And
Well, that's why we have each other, Trevor.
Exactly. As I said, we got to get Gav back. We got to get Troy back, and we got to, get this rodeo back going up again.
Yeah. We'll wrangle them in.
Yeah. It'll take some time, but it'll happen.
Yeah.
All right. So if you've been listening to this and agreeing with us, you could, contact Gavin, tell him to get back here. Contact Troy, do the same. Well, Troy will be added, Troy added some comments in this one, which we will be listening to afterwards. Somehow this all comes together. Anyways, yes,
Troy magic.
Yes. So this has been another episode of Geeking Off the Page. We're not done for. We're still going. With our dying breath, we'll keep going. Thanks for listening, and tune in. Exactly, that dying breath. So tune in. Hopefully next week we'll have more, and if we don't, then the week after, because I can't go longer than 2 weeks without geeking out. So this has been Geeking Off the Page, and I'm Trevor.
I'm Mike.
And same bat time, same bat channel.
Good night, folks.
Good night.
Hey, thanks for try that again. Damn it. Edit, cut, snip, snip. Troy, you know what to do there.